Kalbam.
Sveiki visi, ačiū, kad prisijungėt prie mūsų virtualaus renginio.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our virtual event about communities solving the problem of food waste. This event is organized by Maisto Laboratoria and the Council of Nordic Ministers in Lithuania. This is already yet another event in the series of events organized by Maisto Laboratoria, the city laboratory. Well, it is very difficult to grasp the statistics regarding the food waste, where the third of the food products go to landfills. It has been calculated that if the food products were a country, they would be in the list of the top largest polluters in the world. And it is not only the industry that pollutes with food, but we do contribute to that pollution as well. Part of this food that is being wasted is still good for use, and a lot of food is being wasted by the youth. There are a lot there is a lot of people who don't see a problem in food waste, but fortunately, this share of population is diminishing, and there are increasingly more people who believe otherwise. There are a lot of community initiatives who are focusing on locally grown food and other projects focusing on different solutions how to reduce food waste. And this is what we're going to talk about during this event. So let me introduce the speakers of today's event, which unfortunately, because of the COVID infection, we don't have Maria Abramson. She cannot join us, but we have Irene Delauro from Copenhagen, who is a co-founder of the community Free Fridge in Copenhagen. We also have with us Simonas Gurevicius from the Food Bank, and we also have another guest, a farmer, enthusiastic promoter of prudent food usage, who has a cheese farm. So this event is being interpreted. You can choose the language of interpretation on YouTube channel. And if you have any questions to speakers, you can ask them at the end, after the end of the presentation. So let me introduce the first speaker, Irene Delauro. She's working a lot with economic and food products, and she has written a thesis, a research paper on the project that she is implementing, the Free Fridge. She comes from Copenhagen, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Vaida. I'm very happy to be here and to be virtually there in Lithuania with you. Unfortunately, we couldn't be there together. Today I will present the project that I started in Copenhagen called Salvaging Copenhagen, which means basically community fridge in Copenhagen in Danish. Well, a bit of a summary of what I will be talking about. So I will be, first of all, conceptualizing food as a common, which is our main value. So you can understand why we built this project, then what are other type of urban food commons, and then I will be introducing the fridge and why we started and how it works. And then I will be giving you some interesting reflection on how the pandemic affected our way of practicing various anti-food waste initiatives. And then I will be talking a bit about how we work, how our volunteer network works, and then a bit of like critics on what can be done better and what the future perspective could be. If this sounds good, then I will go ahead and introduce you to what I took as principal value to go on with this project. I used I also wrote my master's thesis on it, so I also went a bit theoretical in it, and I used this paper from Veropol, where it pictures all the different dimensions of food. Just to remind everyone that food is not only a tradable good, it's not only a good that we buy from the supermarket, but it's also a public good. It's essential for humans for survival. It's culturally permanent. It's what mostly our culture is built upon, food and food habits, and then it's also a renewable resource. But the way food is understood now is mostly as a commodity, as mostly as a tradable good. So what we wanted to do with our project is to reestablish the idea that food can be a common good, that can be a good that can be given to people without having a price put on it, and it's also a good that can be easily renewable, and of course easily shareable among people that live in the same neighborhood. Similar initiatives that you might have heard of urban food commons are community gardens, for example, or community spaces where food is grown in a farm and then citizens buy it, usually organic. These type of projects really try to make food again conceptualize it as a common good rather than a commodity good. And of course, within these urban food commons, there's also community fridges where this food can be shared freely. The way these communities work is they're usually self-organized, meaning that are usually volunteer-based, and there is usually no reliance on the market, meaning it's not a company or there is no funding from the state. And what these communities do usually, they try to mitigate a number of environmental and food justice issues, especially seen in cities, like very high food waste, high food insecurity, and easy access to land, the green space where to grow food or to harvest food. And again, there is no profit or market transactions when establishing this type of communities. And also these type of communities try to, in a way, solve the issues related to food and food justice, and they don't try necessarily to give food away for free as some sort of charities do. So in a way, we provide solidarity rather than charity. Here, a bit of my experience within, and that's also like my personal view on it, and my personal experience is that I've been volunteering and also the personal interest in food waste, and I've seen an enormous amount of waste in the last 3 years that I've lived in Denmark. To the left, there is a picture from a supermarket where we collect food from, and then to the right, it's me dumpster diving, which means I go in the back of the supermarkets and I see what the supermarket is throwing, perfectly edible food. And the problem why there is so much food, both given to communities or thrown in the bins, is because there is too high standards, and especially in countries like Denmark, the standards are very, very, very high. The aesthetic standards, I mean, and there is also too much regulation, and it is too hard to give away food to volunteer communities. That's why there is so much food waste that happens. Generally, the numbers are crazy. I think Vaida said something in the introduction. In Denmark alone, there is something like 163,000 tons of edible food wasted every year. Edible meaning that it was food that could have been saved if not it wasn't tossed for the very, very high standards. And then something very interesting is that a lot of the food that is wasted is in the household. And this is not to blame the consumers, but of course, there is it is our fault because we have the habits that we have with food change because of many things, because we're working more time, we're stressed, and so on. But there's also I read that also retail sector plays a part in the household food waste because there is a lot of incentives to sell more food than we actually need. Like just think of the 2 per 3. Like I buy 2 and I get 3, and that just means that I'm buying too much, more than I need. More and more people are living alone. That's also one of the reasons why there's more waste. I can buy a bag of carrots and I eat one, I forget the rest, they go moldy. So this is also why we started a community like this, because there would be more chance for people living alone or living with another person to share more food, and generally for people to share food. That is why we opened a community fridge in Copenhagen, where we wanted really to, I wanted to find an answer to the question of how we can transform all the surplus food that I've experienced in the past years into something that could be shared, and it could be finally a common good, finally something that people can access for free, and that is everyone's good in a way. So what we did is that we contacted the culture house. It's Folketshus, which Folkets means people, Hus means house. So the people's house is a very interesting place in Copenhagen, because it's a place that was going to be transformed into rich apartment buildings, expensive apartment buildings, and people took over the square, and now it's an activist space. And they were very happy to host us. So we are here in the corner. I can show you later where we're located. And then the way we built the structure was also very sustainable. This company, these 2 students helped us to create this structure where there was joints in between these pallets, which we just found in the streets. And when we want to take this structure or the fridges away, the pallets can be reused. So nothing is basically wasted in the way we built this structure. And then we also had some sort of waterproof roof to make it safer to have 2 fridges there. And that's how it looks now. We have 2 beautiful fridges, always filled with surplus food. And then what we do is usually we collect food with these cargo bikes. Very, very popular in Denmark, where you put kids, everything there, and then they're electric. Very nice concept. But yeah, that's how we work. And our values, besides wanting food to be a common good, it's also a concept that is completely based on trust. We trust people to take the food. We trust people to not destroy anything or to not put food that is not good. But of course, we also have a lot of volunteers that check. We don't just leave it on its own. Also, everyone is welcome. People that don't have money, people that have money, kids, adults, whoever can access the food in the fridge. And that is why it's located in a public square. And we also provide anonymity. We provide complete, people can come anonymously, like they don't have to say their names or where they're from or any information, which is very important for some people because they don't want to be seen accessing free food. And also there is no judgment on the quantity of food one take, because we understand certain dynamics, especially for people who have suffered from food insecurity. They might want to take more food than they need because there is some sort of trauma. So for us, they can take it because there is so much surplus food that we can save. So it is not a problem if people take it all. Okay, so here a map of all the fridges. Right now, I took this screenshot a week ago. So right now, there's a lot of community fridges around the world, which one of the reasons for a lot of them growing and a lot of them popping up is because of the pandemic. And why? So COVID, of course, as we all have felt, has exacerbated some of the problems society has, such as food insecurity, loneliness, and lack of social safe spaces. And especially for people who were already food insecure or poorer than others, this got worse. And of course, communities during Corona were popping up everywhere. People were trying to help each other more. And this is a way, making a community fridge is a way of helping each other safely, because it's usually placed outdoors. So you don't have to go into someone's house, or you don't have to meet in a closed space. So it was very safe to establish these fridges around the world, and then help each other by just putting food that we don't use, or putting food that, for example, restaurants that had to close during lockdown. In Copenhagen, we had a lot of those donations for restaurants had to close, or supermarkets still got delivered food, and then we got what they couldn't sell because they were closed. Yeah, and also in a way, in my opinion, and also in other, also in the garden, community fridges are a symbol of the rebellion to the neoliberal policies seen in the last years. So in our case, of course, we took inspiration from other projects, especially from cases in the USA, where, of course, the situation was worse in terms of cases, in terms of people losing their jobs, in terms of inequality. So I talked to a lot of people that established fridges there, and it was very interesting to have their opinion, and that's also inspired me to create one in Copenhagen. And in general, due to the restrictions in Denmark, many people found themselves without a job, or people that had part-time jobs. There were students couldn't have their part-time job anymore. So many people had to, in a way, access free food in order to ease the situation. And I've heard that from many people. They were like, "Thank you, I really needed food during the lockdown because I couldn't work." And also, in a way, it was for many people that were in isolation, were living alone. Going to the fridge was a way of engaging with the city. It was a way of engaging with people outside, which made some people very happy because it was a sad time. And also, what we understood from starting a community fridge during the pandemic is that there was really a need for it. Like it really was justified the existence of it because there were so many people using it. And although the pandemic is not over yet, things are better. But fridges haven't shut down. They're still part of many communities, and they're becoming more and more part of neighborhood identities. For example, in Copenhagen, I don't know if any of you have been in Copenhagen. We have it in Untitled, which is was said to be the coolest neighborhood in the world in 2021. So in a way, like the vibes of the community fridge in Copenhagen really reflect the vibes of the neighborhood in a way. And then, yeah, in generally, there is really a need for communities that are more based on solidarity and on sharing of resources, and also it justifies the share of resources is justified because it's a way of tackling the climate crisis. The less we produce, the more we share, the better it is for the environment. I don't think that you need to talk too much about it. It's pretty straightforward. Okay, so the way we work is that we collect food from various places. It's usually supermarkets, bakeries, and some local community kitchens. When they have cooked food, they put it in the fridge. And people live in the area, or people that need the food, or people that know about the community fridge, they come and they pick it up. We also have a lot of volunteers that collect the food and clean the fridge, and clean the area in general. And what we have done is really to create a space for unconditional food sharing, to making people nicer in a way towards each other, because they had a space where they could share unconditionally. And of course, there is also a space for socializing around food. People that go pick up the food, stop and talk to other people that are there. And the area is usually very lively. There is a lot of people hanging out in the square and eating together. I've seen sometimes people putting a table and then eating food that they found in the fridge. Like a very nice area around the fridge. So here maybe a question that we could some of you can try to answer, or we can have a conversation about it later, is if this is actually a way for solving the issue of food waste and the issue of food insecurity. Because a lot of people connect, although we specify it's what everyone is welcome to use the community fridges, a lot of people still think this food waste and surplus food is only for people who are struggling and who need food. And of course, it makes sense to prioritize people that are struggling. But I've read many papers where scholars have argued that the distribution of food waste or surplus food to food insecure people is an attempt, is a bit of a regressive attempt to solve both issues, because if we keep justifying the existence of food waste because we're giving it to people that are in need, we can't necessarily solve both issues. We can't solve either food waste or food insecurity. And this is a way where a lot of governments take their hands off, because they're like, there's a lot of private organizations working with food waste and working with food insecurity. It's a win-win solution. It's great. They have solved it, but it's not, because still the systemic issues are still there. There's still too much food produced. There's still too high standards. There's still lots of issues to work with in more of a systemic way. But what I think we are doing finally, what we think we're doing is that we are in a way changing the dynamics of how people share food. We're trying to make food a common good, and we're trying to in a way shift some paradigm on how food is interpreted in an urban context. That was my last slide. Thank you very much. I hope I didn't go off time. No, I didn't. And yeah, I would love to answer some questions if there is any.
It's fine. Thank you, Irene, for your presentation. We have one question, which is a rather practical one. Do you have any system of what type of food goes into the fridge in terms of basically food safety, not security, but food safety? And I mean, who ensures that when food is thrown away when it's gone really bad? And you mentioned that there are volunteers cleaning the fridge. So about the practical side of making sure that food that is in the fridge is safe to eat.
I mean, we have guidelines, both on there is posters on the fridge. So we have guidelines there where we say that we do not accept food such as meat, especially raw meat, raw fish. Generally, animal products are discouraged to be put in the fridge just because they are more microbiologically risky. Most of the food we have experienced is fruits and vegetables and bread, which also statistically is the most food waste that happens in the retail sector, in supermarkets. Fruit and vegetables, because there is they have a very low shelf life, they're bruised easily, and there is very, very high standards. So the way we control, of course, we don't have cameras, we don't have any very, very strict way of controlling, but it's with volunteers going there multiple times a day. And if they see that there is food that are not within the guidelines we've given, then they just toss it. And of course, there is a waste, but it's best not to poison everyone. So it's mostly vegetables and bread, the food that is shared in our fridges. But yeah.
Another question is, do your rules allow to put home cooked food, something that people prepared and we don't necessarily know the contents, or for like allergy concerns and things like that? Yeah. So how about that?
By law, no, we shouldn't distribute food that is cooked. We try to not accept it, but we do accept food that is from restaurants and community kitchens. That is like from industrial kitchens, as long as there is a date written. Legally, all the ingredients should be listed and allergies should be listed. We have had, like, we are a food certified business. Like, we had long conversations with the Food Health Authority. So we know all the practicalities. But yeah, we don't encourage people to put the food that they cook at home, because that could be risky. There could be a wrong way of cooking it, storing it, or transporting it. Yeah, we try to discourage that.
So, for instance, if this is surplus food from shops or leftover food, then it probably has to still be labeled, yeah. If it's not a cabbage, like straightforward cabbage.
No, yeah, if it's cooked, yes, yeah,
Mm.
it has to be. For example, I made I don't know, we pick up rice, cooked rice from a restaurant. Then it has to be written rice cooked on the 13th of May or something. Yeah, that is a safe way of transport, of redistributing it, but there is still the law doesn't necessarily agree to it, because we can't assure the way we transport it if it's safe enough. Because like in rice there can still be microorganisms that grow and so on. So like we always try to discourage, but yeah, as I said, it's mostly fruits and veggies.
Mm. So there is also a question, actually two questions. Who pays electricity bill for the fridge?
Yeah. Well, we don't, and since we have this collaboration with the house I showed before, we use their electricity, and they don't charge us because it's an activist house that is partially owned by the municipality. So in a way, the municipality pays for the electricity.
So it's basically mostly publicly funded, you could say.
Public building.
Yeah, yeah. Another question is like, where do you put food? You mentioned that it's regularly checked, and then the food that doesn't fit the regulated contents of it is disposed of. Where do you put the food from the fridge? If nobody takes it, it goes bad, or it's yeah. So how do you like? And actually, I also think it's also interesting, like how intense is this maintenance? Like how often do volunteers check it, and how much work goes into that?
We have 2 to 3 pickups a day, so at least 2 to 3 volunteers go there to drop off the food that they picked up from place, so they check. And then generally there isn't much food that needs to be disposed of, because the food we pick up is just bread from bakeries and fruits and vegetables. But if there needs to be some food that is disposed, we have like 4 big bins in the square where we throw food that is not safe to eat. But yeah, usually the maintenance is 2 to 3 times a day in terms of what food is there. And of course, it is a bit hard to create this type of flow. And at the beginning, it was me and my partner that we did a lot, but then slowly a community creates around. A community was created not naturally around the fridge. So now it is in a way more self-sufficient. But of course, in the beginning, it was different. Like it was a lot of work from our side to make it happen and to make it work. So yeah, there needs to be, if anyone of you is thinking of creating a community fridge, there needs to be like at least 2 people at the beginning that are really passionate about it, that really are up to create guidelines, to remind volunteers how to do things. And of course, it's also hard to know people that are up to help at least once a week or so. So it's also a lot of social media, spamming Facebook and so on.
Would you say what's the balance of food that is donated by the community itself and also commercial enterprises you mentioned, like restaurants, shops, and how is this dynamic?
So we have 5 bakeries, just because bakeries have generally a lot of waste. And in Copenhagen, we have way too many bakeries now. So it's for sure more bread than anything else. And then we have 2 supermarkets where we pick up the food regularly. So that is mostly what happens. Restaurants, sometimes it happens, but it's random. Like we don't have it as a weekly activity. We have it as some restaurants, for example, have call us or have surplus. For example, it happened recently because we had a lot of Omicron cases in Denmark, and recently a theater company ordered lots of like salads in takeaway boxes, and they didn't have the event, and then they called us, and we picked up this like thick, packaged salads, and then we put them in the fridge. That's what usually happens. And of course now like hopefully not anymore, but it has happened a lot because of COVID, that places had to immediately cancel their events or things like that. Did I answer your question, right?
Yeah, I think so. So is the fridge well known enough so that you don't really have to dispose that much of food? Like,
Exactly.
could you estimate, not that much, like what's the percentage that ends up actually in the waste after, even so it was donated?
I mean, the food that ends up in the bin is only the food that is not the one we want. Like, actually, there is never food that we have to throw. Of course, there is like sometimes one more big grape, like things like that. But that's natural. Yeah, it happens in the supermarket all the time. But yeah, we don't really have like bags and bags of potatoes that no one takes. It's very popular. If you ever come to Copenhagen, if you stop by, there is always like at least 5 people in within 10 minutes and stuff. It's quite interesting how popular it is. I also randomly sometimes talk to people and they're like, "Oh yeah, do you know about the community fridge?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I started it." And people are like, "Well, like it's just like random." I mean, Copenhagen is also not very big, but yeah, it's also we went on like TV, and then like we are very popular on Facebook. So I think it's also because of social media and the help at the beginning. Like we pushed a lot at the beginning.
Right. Thank you, Irene. That was very interesting. Thank you so much. Na, o dabar perduodu žodį Simonui Gurevičiui.
Now I want to introduce Mr. Simonas Gurevičius, who is head of the Charity and Support Foundation Food Bank. The foundation has been working in Lithuania for the past 20 years, and they think that preventing food waste is one of their priorities and goals in their work. So Simonas will talk about the challenges and experiences fighting food wasting. Simonas, the floor is yours. Thank you very much for the floor. It is incredibly nice to be here in this conference. I was fascinated by Irene's presentation, and what they did with the community fridge was amazing. And basically, the food bank is a giant fridge that is located across Lithuania. So what is our goal in the food bank? We believe that no good food should go to waste, and no single person deserves to go hungry. We've been part of the European Union for quite some time now, and we see our economic indicators getting better. But we see that every 8th citizen in Lithuania says that they are food insecure. They cannot afford every single whole grain product that they need. And this is where the food bank comes in. We believe that there is too much surplus food, but there is also demand for food. So we try to be this intermediate, we try to be this connecting link to prevent surplus food. And if there is surplus food, that food should get to the homes of people who really need. And that's why we talk about food salvaging pyramid. A lot of the time in Lithuania, people skip over food salvaging stages, and I will talk about them in detail right now. First of all, we all should start with planning, thinking about how much food you truly need. And we do need to consume less food, significantly less. And once the demand for food is lower, the supply is lower as well. And this is a way to fight surplus food. Production, manufacturing, retailing are processes planned in a way that there is still food left, no matter how efficient you are. We know that one third of all food produced globally goes unused. They remain on the shelves, they remain undistributed to people who really need them. So, one choice could be to give that food to the poor to feed them. And this is what we organize. This is what we do. Uh, and we work with, obviously, there are pet shelters, there are other green ways to tackle food waste. We could produce biocompost. Yes, these things are important, but I believe that we should start with feeding our people and then putting food waste, surplus food to pets and composting. And I believe in Lithuania and in every country across the world, or at least in Europe, in my opinion, we can avoid this surplus food going into waste. So, how do we work? There's a lot of organizations, farmers, catering organizations, supermarkets, everybody who has deals with food. We have small commercial vans, we have electric commercial vans. We have bigger vans that collect together with our partners this surplus food. That surplus food is delivered to our warehouses. We sort the food and then we started distributing that food. And food goes to the poor. And what do I mean by the poor? As a rule, the poor include single elderly people and single parents. These are two categories that need the food the most. And at this time in particular, when it has become a struggle to provide, to sort of purchase a variety of food. And just as Irene mentioned already, vegetable and fruits are two categories of food that get wasted a lot. So by salvaging these products, we can help the environment, protect the environment, and we can save families, save people. We have a lot of families with multiple kids. We have students who receive our food packages, and maybe they're in temporary difficulty, but they still benefit from our food packages. We have another category that is the unemployed. Um, And in Lithuania, hopefully, when all the legal issues are addressed and cultural issues are addressed, we'll be able to deliver food packages to a different category of people, to people who actually can buy food, but they would like to eat surplus food just as a way to preserve food, as a way to avoid food wasting. So we're moving towards that concept, towards that idea that people, all people, should eat surplus food, and that eating surplus food and preventing it from going to waste should be fostered, recommended as a way to fight food waste. In 2021, we managed to salvage over 6,000 tons of food from going into waste. We have a fridge that is capable of accommodating over 6,000 tons of food. So that's the figure for the last year. And in the next year, we hope to save the same amount of food. And hopefully in the 2 years' time, we'll be able to save 6,500 of tons. Obviously, saving food, salvaging it from the bin, depends on our capacities and how much we can store. So, how do we work practically? We have a lot of farmers, retailers who experiment in producing products. They experiment, they get samples of products, but these products are not designed to be sold. So the food bank collects these products, they're safe to use, they're just not going onto shelves. So we collect them. For example, right now we just accepted a large batch of food products just because they were mislabeled. The quality hasn't changed, the production is safe, but the label is wrong. But because the label is wrong, that food cannot go onto shelves. Here comes the food bank. We replace the labels and we are able to distribute this food to the poor, and that food is saved. And we're not limited to vegetables and fruits. We distribute other foods as well. Our food packages include also food who visually don't look pleasing or don't comply with the aesthetic standard. The food is perfectly fine. It's just that visually it might not be appealing to supermarkets. So we collect these products as well. We collect also byproducts of production processes. Let's say we have collaboration with a dairy organization. They produce strawberry yogurt, and they could wash their machinery and start producing blueberry yogurt, but that costs. So this dairy organization came this with idea that they should run their batches instantly after the strawberry yogurt is done. They start producing blueberry yogurt, but the initial batch has a mix of everything: strawberry and blueberry. The yogurt itself is perfectly fine. It can be uh, consumed, but it's just that it cannot go on the shelves because it's not purely strawberry yogurt and it's not purely blueberry yogurt. So that mix is collected separately, and the food bank collects it and distributes it in community kitchens and distributes to the poor and other charity organizations. It also happens that organizations face with logistical issues, and sometimes food products just don't reach their destination. For example, you have the holiday period, and for example, you have remain surplus chocolate bars that were designed and have labels designed for Christmas, but the Christmas is already gone and they're left. So we can collect these kind of products and distribute them as well. Uh, Also, we collect food that is nearing its end of shelf life. That production is, these products are still safe to use, but they cannot be left on the shelves. So it is the job of the food bank to collect the products because they're still perfectly fine to be consumed, but they cannot be sold in stores anymore. Another sort of last important part of our job is to collect products such as fish, meat, dairy that are expiring. So that it's the last day of their expiration. And we are able to collect that food, bring it to our warehouses before lunchtime, and by the end of the day, these products are on the tables of our recipients. Obviously, we want to expand our operations, but because of legal regulations, we find we face some difficulties. Uh, And these difficulties mainly relate to food that can be donated by individual households. We at the moment we can only collect food that is in untampered packaging. Just like in Denmark, we cannot accept food cooked at home because we cannot ensure food safety. And events like COVID had their impact. People went to the stores to stock up on products, but a lot of those products remained unconsumed. So we collected all that food that was purchased because of it was driven by panic, and we were able to collect food in unopened packages because usually people buy little quantities of food, like milk in just 1 liter of milk as opposed to 2, 3, or 5 liters. So we were able to collect all these products: bread, coffees, teas, canned food, oils, biscuits. These products are good to use even if they're past their use by date. Uh, Obviously, these products should come in unopened packages. We also accept half a liter glass jars. In Vilnius, we have a community kitchen and we have this know-how. Hopefully, that will be distributed across Lithuania. We take products that are still good to be used and we make soups out of them and pour them into these half-liter glass jars donated by our people. The only thing we do need is to buy lids that can be screwed on. And this way we can make into final product, something that seemingly cannot be used. We also cooperate with restaurants and coffee shops. Uh, we see that a lot of the time people are reluctant to admit that there is surplus food. If for a restaurant, it's not good to recognize, to admit that they have surplus food left. They want to present this image that everything is used up in their restaurant. But it is possible to make sure that both parties, the food bank and restaurants, are happy. We're very happy with our partnership with restaurants in Vilnius, and we're promoting this partnership in other cities after sort of daily lunches, daily meals. You have a lot of food that is not consumed. And in the last couple of years, we had a lot of advertising on TV involving food. And all that food that is filmed for advertising then would go to waste, but it doesn't go to waste. We collect that food. So all parties involved who make these advertising, if they're conscious eaters, conscious consumers, they contact us and we can collect then food left after advertising filming. We do live in a country where food quantities and population figures aren't that big, but we could look at the figures showing the impact of the food bank. We, the food bank and organizations we collaborate with, were able to produce 12 million portions of meals last year. So that's 17.5 tons of CO2 emission savings. and we were able to conserve 1.4, 1.1 million liters of water that would be needed to produce that food. So our mission is much more than just saving the planet. We are thinking about our future generations as well. Our support and the job we do is a tiny secret. We do seemingly speak about what we do, but it seems that few people know how much people we help. We help over 560 social organizations a year, and they save 8.6 million euros on food because they receive surplus food from us. That means they don't have to buy new food, and all the savings, financial savings they're able to generate go on to helping and addressing other needs of those social organizations and people. So our huge fridge helps on average 133,000 poor people a month. We have 203 locations where we distribute food across different areas in Lithuania. You, just that figure shows the how big is the coverage of our activities. Obviously, our work would not be possible without our volunteers. We have only around 50 employees, drivers, warehouse attendants. But in addition to that figure, we have over 2,000 people who regularly help with different activities of the food bank. And all of this is done on volunteer basis. Without them, these figures would not be possible. We have warehouses in 5 cities. We have 10 of commercial vans, and we have the capacity to prepare meals, save on CO2 emissions, preserve water. Obviously, just like with any other operation, we face challenges. We have legal requirements that we have to follow. Let's recall the homemade food, or let's recall situations where individual households buy products and open packages. We are unable to collect this food. There is still this problem that people don't fully understand what it means to fight food waste. People think that, yeah, I bought food, I don't need it, so what? I can bin it, I don't need it, that's it. But every item of food we bin means more than just money. It means deforestation to turn land into arable land, and a lot more resources that are needed to produce food. Next to me, I have a poster which says that 1 kilogram of chocolate requires over 17,000 liters of water, and 15,000 liters of water are needed for 1 kilogram of beef to be produced. So often people don't see the figures, the resources behind the food they bin. Another thing that is difficult is that food does not walk. Uh, Collecting food, distributing it is a logistical challenge. Every day we have to visit over 500 stores, 502 stores. And we still have plans to visit more stores. A lot of the time, stores and points of sale are covered by the food bank, but we still have one supermarket chain that does not give us food, at least to a great extent. So right now, another challenge, the biggest challenge we have is working with our farmers. In the next 3 to 4 years, we have to do a lot to make sure that all the food that stays on the fields in warehouses of farmers unsold, or best case scenario is turned into feed. Hopefully we will be able to collect that food. Obviously, I'm not saying that pets should not be fed, that products should not be composted. No, but we believe that food first and foremost should go to feed people, and only then to the rest of the participants in the food chain. When fighting food waste, it is important to mention that financial resources are a must, as well as human resources. To save food, um, we have, and just let me give you an example. In order to pick up food that is last day of use by date, we have to collect it in the morning. We have to deliver it to our warehouses before noon. We have to sort this and then distribute it by the evening. So without these 2,000 volunteers, that would be impossible. And I have to say that in Lithuania, volunteering is happening slowly. We still have to do a lot to promote volunteering and to have more volunteers. But I'm happy to say, and I'm very proud of the fact that Lithuania, being a small European country, is capable to do this huge work to save food. Hopefully, we will be getting less and less food from supermarkets. That would mean that they are able to plan their operations better. We want to focus on delivering food to people who really need this, and delivering that food quickly. We want to start cooperating with people, households directly, because individual households waste food. So we are hoping for a shift in our thinking, and we believe that our people can donate food to other community members. Hopefully, they will realize that they don't need a charity or support foundation or organization to do that. Hopefully, there will be one day this culture of donating food to community members directly, supporting community members directly. Hopefully, I managed to fit into the time allocated to me. Thank you very much for everyone who listened, who participated, and hopefully we can all bravely say and stick to the idea, let's stop food waste. Here you see images of our store and our warehouse. You see small, maybe not so visually pleasing apples, but that are still good to be used. A lot of them could be turned into apple pies, apple jams. In another picture, you see a mountain of bags and a team of people who work relentlessly to stop food waste and to distribute that food to those who need it. So thank you very much for listening. And if you have any questions, I will answer them gladly.
Thank you, Simon. Yes, there are a lot of questions that we receive in chat. Well, there is one question. You mentioned that there are increasingly more people who are interested in using surplus food, not because they are deprived of food, but because they support the idea of not wasting food. So how, or are you looking for the ways to reach out to these people, or have you already exhausted all the possibilities that you have for cooperation with those partner organizations that indeed need the food products that you collect? Well, thank you for the question. In fact, we have huge amounts of food that we collect, and the majority is distributed to those who are deprived. But we are also thinking of the ways how to reach people who might be interested in surplus food. And now we are negotiating with some supermarkets how to process some surplus food and bring it back to the shelves of the stores. And then they can again be available for buyers to get. And so far, we have very few people who believe that there will be a demand for products, for processed products with the label of the food bank. We, on the other hand, we do believe in this idea. And I think in the near future, we will have the possibility of offering such processed foods for the supermarkets. And I'm sure there will be people who will be happy to get these products and use them. By doing so, we encourage using the surplus food and not wasting any more of the products. Well, I believe that you are cooperating with big commercial organizations such as supermarkets, and some of the audience, but some of the participants ask how are you managing to collect the products because your resources are limited. And for example, let's say there is a cafe or restaurant who has a lot of unused meals. So from the logistic point of view, is it worthwhile for you to go and get that food? Well, we are cooperating with all donors, big or small. Why? Because we have over 560 organizations who are getting the food from us. So we try to reduce the traveling distance because we try to match the demand for food with the supply of food. We try to do it locally, and it is our task as the food bank to bridge the person who needs food with the cafeteria or restaurant who has food. We cooperate with Food LT, the restaurant network, and we can come and collect even the 5 portions of food. And we are trying to match make, so to speak, those who are in need and those who can donate. And every small step matters. I see that Irene
your question. There is a possibility you can do it.
Okay. Yes, thank you, Silas, for your presentation. It's very, very interesting. Okay, so I have 2 questions. Okay, can you hear me properly? Cool. I was wondering if you have a team that reaches out to like supermarkets or food industries to get deals. Like, do you have a specific like deal? How do you call it? I don't know.
Mūsų komandoje mes turime žmonės, kurie
on our team, we have people who are fundraisers, just like fundraisers. Fundraisers are collecting money, so to speak, and food raisers are targeting their efforts to organizations who have food available or surplus food available. Well, there is one complication though, because we not only want to get food, but we want those organizations to become our partners in the fight against food waste. We want them to contribute to this fight against food waste. It is our ambition to have or create a society that consists of not only people who are delivering and transporting food, which is indeed a huge logistical effort, but we want also people who have food and are prepared to use it wisely. Yes, to answer your question, Irene, we do have those scouts who go into the supermarkets and who are looking for deals for foods which are nearing the best before or use by date, and we just get those food products that we redistribute later on. Irene, you had another question?
This question is a bit more complicated. I just wanted to ask if you think that only redistributing food, well, you don't only redistribute, but do you think redistributing food waste is enough to tackle all the environmental issues related to it? And I would like to know if you're working with the government, for example, to introduce stricter policies about food waste reduction.
Mes iš tikrųjų labai artimai dirbame su.
Well, yes, indeed. We are cooperating with the states very closely. We want to be as close to the state institutions and authorities as possible. We want to make sure that the amount of wasted food is monitored, and that includes any food products, including those that could have been still used as food. And we also are working with organizations. We're trying to promote certain incentives for organizations that are sharing food. And in order to achieve that, we need to change our regulatory base. And we want to achieve that in the future, the state encourages everyone who has surplus food to give it away, and also to those who need the food, or to make it easier for those who are in need to get it. We are working very closely with the Ministry of Agriculture. We are raising lots of initiatives, yet many of the initiatives have not reached the final stage yet. But the Green Deal of Europe leaves us very hopeful that the situation will change rather sooner than later. We hope that, well, so far the government has not contributed too much to changing the environment, but we believe that the situation will change in the future, and that will make the lives of every one of us better. Every decision matters, and wise decisions can solve a lot of problems. Thank you, Simonas. Now, I think I have one last question about the funding. There is one participant from the audience is interested how the food bank activity is funded. Thank you very much for that question. Excellent question. And our activity is funded from the funds collected from private donors. We also have quite a few partnerships with different business companies. And another source of funding is municipalities. We try to cooperate with those municipalities and offer them our services. So basically, a mixture of private and business funds with the hope that in the future the government will see a partner in us and will contribute to funding of our activity. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and over to you so that you can give the floor to Valdas, the next speaker. Simonas, in his presentation, has mentioned that one of the areas where the food bank is hoping to extend their activity is cooperation with farmer organizations. And we have our next speaker who is a farmer and representative of the cheese house or Sūrininkų namai, Valdas Kavaliauskas, and Sūrininkų namai or cheese house is a label that is recognized in Lithuania quite readily. And this label is very closely linked to the personality of Valdas, who believes in the sustainable farming practices. Valdas has been engaged in all sorts of educational activities, promoting solidarity between urban and rural areas. So Valdas will make a presentation about sustainability and sustainability not only in economical terms, but also in environmental terms. So Valdas, over to you. Good afternoon, and thank you to the previous speakers. Perhaps I will disappoint Simonas somewhat, because the activity of our association is aiming at reducing the amounts of wasted food, which means less products for the food bank and free fridges in Copenhagen. So I think that the largest problem in relation to food waste can be explained by the fact that the distance from field to table is very long. And not only that, we are importing increasingly more vegetables and fruit from other countries, and to a certain extent, it's already by default means that there will be more wasted food and consequently even larger pollution, again contributing to climate change and pollution of the environment, of nature. So in my presentation, I will talk about partnerships between eaters and producers. And by saying that, and by partnerships, I mean not only the need to consume everything that we produce, but also the necessity to have good quality food at affordable prices, so that the cost and quality ratio is optimal for the consumer. And today we can also talk about one more important aspect, which is our treatment of the environment, or you mentioned that about 30% of CO2 emissions are related to the food sector. And we have therefore to admit that we have a huge challenge, we as the food producers. But on the other hand, I believe that there are solutions, especially if we if we make an effort to reduce this chain or the distance between the producer and the consumer. We also have to make sure, or to try to ensure, that local producers produce for local eaters. I'm a small farmer, and most of my products are taken to Vilnius, the capital of Lithuania. We live 70 kilometers from Vilnius. But today we are now concentrating more to our local neighborhood. Now we are trying to establish the profile of products that are in demand locally. And by doing this, we hope to reduce the chain between the producer, us, and the eater, consumer. So therefore, I can say that the interaction between the urban eater and rural producer is rather complicated. Because they are seeking different goals. Well, one of the goals that the agricultural or rural sector has is to produce enough food products. Enough food products for people to feed on. So it is our main task or our function to produce enough food so that the people of our country don't go hungry in case, let's say, something happens and or food from other countries cannot be brought to Lithuania any longer. But then, when we're talking about extensive farming practices, when we are using when we are using less of natural resources, we are not using fertilizers, and then the amount of products produced by 1 hectare is smaller, though the quality is higher. And that represents a challenge. In this way, it would be very difficult for small farmers to feed Lithuania. On the other hand, eaters want to get these products at affordable prices. And it is natural, it can be expected, of course, and we need to look for a compromise between the producer and the eater. The producer says, well, I need to earn enough in order to have my sustainable activity or to keep it afloat. My activity is not charity, it is I need to make money in order to enough money for a living. And one more aspect which has now become a very popular topic in public, and I specifically refer to climate change and environment protection. Apart from the climate crisis, we can mention 2 other aspects that cannot be ignored. One is biodiversity, biodiversity in our rural areas, and the other one is the contribution, the negative impacts that we make as producers to the pollution of nature, including biodiversity. All sorts of plastic packagings that are used by producers, and not only that, everything that we do have impacts on climate change. We are contributing to CO2 emissions, and so on, and so on, and so on. So we need to find the right balance between the 4 elements that I mentioned. We need to have enough food, farmers need to make enough money, we need to have clean production technologies, and we need to protect the environment. And therefore, I believe that, or we believe that the solution is the partnership between the producers and the consumers, eaters. And we need both parties to sit together and discuss, agree on a compromise. This is a problem that is relevant not only to producers, but also for eaters. Now we have lots of volunteers who are prepared to help to distribute the food that is not used, for example, by restaurants. So we can already see that the eaters already are thinking how to improve the relationship between the eaters and the producers. But let's go back 10 years ago. We were small cheese producers, and several such small producers or cheese makers, bread makers, they went to Vilnius, Cafe Paris. We improvised a small farmers market, and we actually had a direct contact with many eaters. We struck a lot of good partnerships, and we also generated an idea to have to set up an association, Evasol. And that idea came from France. In France, in France, EMAP association started mushrooming, and they were developed by taking the example, by following the example from America and Canada. This association supports farms and farming associations, and the principle they employ is kind of agreements between a group of eaters and a group of producers. So a group of eaters, they undertake in advance an obligation to buy a certain amount of food, and producers, according to this contract, are delivering them baskets of products, certain agreed products. So we have, well, such associations sprung up around Paris and some other larger cities of France. And those associations invited local farmers. And at the end of the day, the eaters from large and since the farmers were basically located in more remote villages, at the end of the day, large cities didn't have. They were kind of. They didn't have the possibility to buy food at affordable prices, good quality fresh food at affordable prices. So this problem was more or less solved by the associations. We liked the idea, but regretfully, our association Vivasol, it did not develop enough to have a group of eaters for making this advance purchase contract as it was in France, America, or Canada. It is, well, we also have to admit that perhaps the producers were not prepared enough to undertake such obligations to deliver at certain dates and frequencies. We didn't have adequate technologies, and perhaps even our financial situation was not adequate. So our intentions were good, but unsuccessful. Nevertheless, I believe that we have gained a lot of valuable experience, and we learned a lesson that a key element to the partnership between eaters and producers is trust, bilateral trust that allows finding a compromise. So Vivasol has existed for 10 years, and we had several places where we used to visit in Vilnius, for example, Café Paris and Café Guru, and then the Timo markets in Vilnius. And we had such meeting spots where we would bring our products and sell these products directly to eaters. And those eaters had a kind of a moral obligation to come and to get those products. Now, Association Vivasol is mostly engaged in educational activity, namely agroecology. And we are offering, we are educating farmers that small farming or small scale farming is perhaps the most environment friendly type of farming without major invasions into the nature and or damaging biodiversity. Another good example of partnership happened during the quarantine, during the pandemic. And Irene has already mentioned that COVID-19 pandemic had a major impact or actually changed the way we cooperate, it changed the way we behave. And we producers, we actually had, or we were faced with the disrupted relationship between the eater and the producer, because people were not allowed to come into the public or to come in or to be in bigger groups of people, even outside. There were a lot of restrictions and limitations, and therefore we kind of invented another system, a new system, a weekly box of products system. We identified certain locations in Vilnius and some other cities, mostly those were cafes which could not operate during the pandemic, but they had the possibility of delivering the takeout service. So we agreed that they will become our pickup terminals for the weekly product boxes. And the consumers again use the internet to buy the products they need, and then they come up to the pickup place to get their products. And I call it a partnership between the producer and the eater, because our promise to the consumer was that we will deliver good quality products, certain amount of good quality products every week that you will be able to pick up from a certain place in your city. But there is another obligation to be undertaken by the consumer, that you will never know what products will be in the box. Yet all the boxes are exactly the same. I mean, their composition, the products in those boxes are the same. So if you buy the service, you can always get a box of your products, but you never know what kind of products you are getting every week. And I'm very happy to say that this idea was met with enthusiasm. There were a lot of people who got interested in this initiative. And it was very good to see that sometimes when our buyers couldn't eat all the products from the box, would bring or would share these products with the neighbors, and we even offered a discount for this to our consumers. So if our customer is not capable of to use all the products that he got in the box, he was free to share the products with their next door neighbors. So that was really a good idea. But after the quarantine restrictions, when the delivery network was expanded, our idea went into the background. We still exist. We still cooperate with Miesto Laboratorija, with Cafe I16, and the Benedict markets in Vilnius. They are still delivering our product boxes, weekly product boxes to the customers. And to finish, I would like to say a few words about our new project, a hub of food knowledge, Three Lakes hub, which will be a cooperation between farmers from the same territories, including, for example, milk, goat milk, cow milk producers, and cheese makers, apple growers, and other farmers who could cooperate in compiling the weekly product boxes, thus making the range of products we offer more varied. We small cheese making farms, so far we have been focusing on producing kind of elite or very high quality products, which are expensive. But at the moment, we believe that we should nevertheless focus on daily consumption products and on our local consumers, making the contact between eaters and producers very close. And perhaps there is one more new idea or innovation, but every innovation is just a repetition of an old idea. So in order to encourage local consumption, we are thinking of introducing our local tender or our local money, so that the money could be used and accepted in a certain local territory, encouraging local people to buy from local stores, locally produced products. And yesterday, by the way, I brought a grapefruit, and I was very disappointed to see that it came from all the way to China, and the quality was not very good. We are also thinking about renting of cows or goats and hens for the summer period. There are quite a few people who have their summer houses in rural areas. They do not have the possibility to keep farm animals all year long, but they could be interested in keeping hens or goats during the summer period. And after the summer period, those goats and hens could go back to the farms and spend the winter there. This is yet another way of bringing the producer closer to consumer. Well, in the past, we agricultural country. We are used to producing our own food, and there are quite a lot of people who are still doing that in the rural areas. So now we are trying to combine all these initiatives in order to find the ways how to work best with the local community without forgetting urban population as well. Because, well, city people need to realize that if they want to get a high quality product and sustainable product, they have two options only. Either you show solidarity and participate in some phase of its production or delivery, or you pay high price. And sometimes these prices seem to be unjustifiably high. Because if we are talking about long distances, willy-nilly, we have to introduce a number of intermediaries in order to make sure that the product gets to the consumer in the city. And indeed, if we sell our cheese for 10 euro, just because of all these intermediaries, you in the city can get the same cheese for 20 euros. So is it good? I don't think so. But let's find the solution. And I have this naive hope that the food bank's activity will shrink, not expand in Lithuania. I do appreciate its function of redistribution, but I really wish there were no wasted food, no surplus food. We have surplus food only because our delivery chains are not logical, they are not sustainable, and because we, the eaters, we don't care enough about the products that we buy, the packaging that we use. And every time, well, in Varėna, for example, in one supermarket, I saw the people from food bank collecting the products. I got concerned indeed, because they were not getting the best quality products. I'm not talking about the food safety standards. The best before or use by dates are okay. But I'm talking about the pollution, the use of fertilizers, or the conservation methods, or the impact the production of that product had on the environment. So I would say that perhaps not the best products end up in the food bank, and this is not good. So, and I will finish by saying that we should try to find time to get together. Eaters should find time to visit producers. Producers should find time to visit eaters. And we need to find solutions that would help us to eat, to have good products, tasty products, and sustainable products that are environmentally friendly. By doing so, we will make our world better and greener. Thank you for your attention.
Ir aš kažkaip klausydamasi pagalvojau, kad Panašu, kad toms
Thank you, Valdis, very much. I was listening to Valdis, and I understand from his presentation that shortening our supply chain really needs a lot of effort. And the European Union strategy from farm to fork could be a good way to do that, to actually a good way to promote the green deal. I did not highlight this, and I do not understand why in Lithuania your baskets, the idea of basket you were introducing did not work. Maybe that's because of our seasonality, the seasonal nature of food. Maybe it's just too easy in Lithuania to order delivery from anywhere in the world. And I recall the situation you had with grapefruit. Uh, so in Lithuania, we need to change our mindset, our habit, probably habits of how we eat, what we eat. Maybe we should go back to our roots, and changing our mindset is not that easy. I believe that some time needs to pass. Yes, the situation is changing. People are looking more responsibly to their food. They're more conscious about what they eat, about in what kind of environment they live. Maybe the pace is too slow, because maybe as eaters, and I'm an eater myself, as eaters, we are still thirsty for exotic foods. We are attracted to exotic labels, to colorful labels, to exotic fruit, to exotic vegetables. And maybe for us, buying just tomatoes for Christmas is just too plain. And I'm not talking just about imported products. Let's recall the situation with Lithuanian cucumbers. We have first Lithuanian cucumbers in stores, but we are all surprised because of the price. They cost €8 a kilogram. So given all the energy costs, our heating bills, that €8 price tag is absurd. And we are still characterized by thirst. We still want, and we're still attracted to exotic things and shiny things. And it will take time for us to get saturated with all these things until we get bored of them. But education, systemic approach can also play a role. The European Union, in my opinion, pays enough attention and focuses and speaks about short supply chains, about greening of our environment. But the society as a whole, eaters, farmers, are pretty much resistant to the Green Deal, and you can look at the reactions within the society. Our eaters get disappointed with local producers, saying that local producers are the same as everybody else. They're not better. And sometimes our eaters can be right in this regard, and therefore we don't prioritize local producers just because we don't know what kind of quality we get. The fact that a product is made in Lithuania doesn't attest to its quality. The short supply chain wouldn't address the problem. We do need to build trust, because between eater and local producer, if we build this trust, then we will have this direction, this communication between the eater and the producer, and we can move forward from there. Yes, there are small networks. Yes, there are initiatives of produce baskets. I know of cases of subscription box for seasonal vegetables. There are things like that. Unfortunately, these initiatives are very small and they get lost in this massive information sphere, and they're not visible enough. And a lot of the times you need to support these initiatives. And we had a discussion some time ago with the Ministry of Agriculture. We were talking about funding for local programs, and they said that programs targeted at local manufacturers, local producers are not popular. Yes, but every program needs time. We producers need to address a lot of environmental issues, and all local producers need support. They need education, and that their work is needed, that the work is important. So the state has to play a role in that. It also has to support the producer with project aspects where producers participate in projects targeted at the environmental conservation, at better practices, better farming practices. Unfortunately, only 1% of arable land in Lithuania is dedicated to environmental projects. This is a different topic, a very wide topic. Another question was, were there any initiatives with food produce? You mentioned that these initiatives are still going on and people can search for information where you can find them. Yes, they still exist in one form or another. Yes, you have to look for information quite a bit, but and we will focus in the association with a soul to gather this information, to collect all this information about these initiatives on food produce baskets, and maybe disseminate this information more widely to the public. There are still initiatives like that going on. In Lithuania, these are provided mostly by family type of networks. Somebody has a family business of canned food, preserved food. So these are informal networks. Yes, these are informal networks, and we tend to write off these informal networks as if they're not existing. The same thing with producers. If you're not registered, then you're a non-existent producer. The same with informal networks. Thank you very much, Valdes, for your contribution. We have to summarize now the conference. Thank you very much, Valdes, for your insights. Thank you, Irene Delauro from the Community Fridge in Denmark. Thank you, Simonas Gurevičius from the Food Bank, and Valdes Kavaliauskas from the Cheese House. I will try to summarize the key insights from this conference and things I will take away from the presentations of our speakers. And we saw that a significant portion of foods that are still good to use go to bin, and individual households account for 50% of all food waste. So we have discussed, and we believe that all of this is irresponsible behavior. Food should not be wasted because this has impact on the environment. So we should stop food wasting, and we should address the issue of food waste within our communities. We have to work together, and the example of Denmark, and Irena told us about this, is good to follow. Community fridges is a way to save food that is still good to eat, and that food could go to those who really need it. And the community fridge is a way to distribute the food in an anonymous way, and Irene talked about this. Their fridges work in Copenhagen, and she stressed the fact that food could be seen as a commons, and when the community comes together, it can be very successful. And given the backdrop of our pandemic situation, where a lot of people lost their jobs, food insecurity became wide. Community fridges could be an actual source of help to people, just like Irene said. Uh, the food bank introduced the food salvaging pyramid. In a way, everything that is left and still can be used, is safe to use, should be given to other people, as opposed to going into feed or going into composting. Wasting, binning food should be the last resort. Another good thing to remember is labeling, and most specifically the best before date, because a lot of foods can be used even after that date. In Lithuania, single parents, the elderly, the disabled still need a lot of help, and most surplus food in Lithuania comes to address food insecurity of these groups. For businesses that work in the food industry, it's important to educate them that having surplus food is nothing to be ashamed of. That food can be used or put for a good use. Simonas Garavičius has already mentioned that there are people out there who choose to consume surplus food, not because they're poor, they're bad off, but because they're environmentally conscious. They want to uh, protect their environment. Valdas Kavaliauskas was very good in summarizing our situation. In an ideal case, the idea of the food bank is good, but it would be also even better if we didn't have surplus food, if we didn't have food waste. And the best way to do that is to shorten our supply chains, to have fresh, safe food to people locally. And that would be very important for environmental reasons, because we are facing a huge environmental challenge. And this is where we will end our conference. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to us. Thank you to interpreters who managed to keep up with my speed, because I am a very fast speaker. We're the food laboratory, and this is the fourth event we're dedicating to environmental challenges. We're tackling things like sustainable mobility and everything in between. So you can find all the information on our website. I'm Vaida Pilibaitytė. Thank you very much, and goodbye.